Okay, it is 7 p.m. in San Diego, and I thought we might as well get started. So welcome everybody that's shown up. Before we get started, I wanted to ask you a little favor to see if you, I don't know how familiar you are with Zoom yet, to make sure that you have the chat box open. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see chat. And so if you have questions there, we will be looking at those. If you're comfortable turning on your video, I would love to see you all. Of course, we can't see each other in person at the moment yet, but I'd love to see kind of everybody that's interested in joining us this evening. And if you don't mind, keep yourself muted so that we don't have somebody who is, has a dog barking in the background or something like that, kind of disturbing the webinar. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. That is an option in the participants menu. So if you click on participants, you'll see an option there to say yes, no, raise your hand. Again, if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself and just ask the question. We want to make this quite interactive. So let's see how we do. All right, so let me just turn it over for introductions to the Executive Director of the MSBA program here at Rady, which is Ray Pettit.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rady. Rady is located about 120 miles south of Los Angeles, about 10 miles north of San Diego, in a beautiful seaside village called La Jolla. The school, as you can see, points to the ocean. We're about 300 yards from the ocean. So I thought I'd just take a few minutes to introduce myself and some of the folks we've been chatting with, and then really turn it over to the faculty, the founders of the program, Terry and Vince. So I just started here at Rady in 2018. Actually have 25 years experience in New York City, but basically on the commercial side, advertising, media, and marketing measurement. I worked for a variety of firms, some of them you might recognize. And here at Rady, in addition to general management of the program, working very closely with Terry and Vince, I also manage the Capstone projects, which I'll talk about a little later. Next slide. You might have talked to these folks already. Definitely Nancy's been chatting with a lot of you. Nancy's on the line. I don't know if she's able to say hi, but she comes to us from UC Irvine. Got her master's in teaching and learning from Ashford. Spent years in Los Angeles market, TV and radio marketing, and the last 9 years as a recruiting specialist, which is the talent she brings to us here. And Emily Dayton, who I think all of you have probably emailed at least once, comes to us from Michigan, Kalamazoo College, 9 years in education, 7.5 at UC San Diego, and 4.5 at Rady. She's both these guys are terrific folks to work with, and hopefully your experience with them has been good. As you have questions going forward in the program, you'll feel free to continue to reach out to Nancy and Emily. And now let's turn over to the faculty.
Terry?
Sure. Hi, I'm Terry August. Together with Vincent, we started this program 5 years ago. Actually, from the beginning, we put the proposal together and got it through the UC system. And since then, we've been kind of serving as co-directors of it from the academic side. I've been at Rady since 2007, so this is, I think it's my 13th year here. I'm a professor in, I guess, the area of operations management and information systems. And so whether it's in the MBA program or in the MSBA program, I teach courses kind of in that domain. Most of my research is related to the economics of cybersecurity. And so it's, I guess, a little bit closer to the information systems field. And that's where if you look at the conferences I go to and kind of the journals that I publish to, it's usually in information systems. And the last thing I'd say is for this cohort, I'll be teaching operations management to you guys in the fall, as well as the business analytics, kind of the first foundations course.
And hi, I'm Vincent Nice. I definitely need to update my picture. At some point I'll do that, I'm sure. I'm an associate professor in the marketing group. I have a background in marketing and kind of slowly drifted into analytics because that really became my passion. I've been at Rady for 10 years. since 2010. And before that, I was at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. And I will teach you several things throughout the program, but the main course that you're going to have from me will be customer analytics, which will be in winter quarter. And then we have another faculty member who is kind enough to join us today, Hoirik Shin, and I'll just let him introduce himself briefly.
Right. Hello, everyone. This is Shin, and my research is mostly on supply chain management, demand forecasting, and I studied statistics at the University of Chicago as a master's degree, and then I studied business at Stanford. And I joined Rady in 2012, so I've been here for about 8 years. And before that, like Vincent, I taught at Kellogg School of Management. I will teach you guys supply chain analytics in the winter, and I really, really hope, fingers crossed, I'll be able to teach you in person. Okay? Back to you, Vincent.
Okay, so why are we here? Why are you interested in analytics, in business analytics and data science? Mainly because you all see the incredible explosion that there's been throughout the world in all kinds of industries and businesses, including education, around data. There's just so much more data now than that there ever has been. There's really been a volume increase in the availability of data. It's just massive. And so these days, about 1.7 megabytes of new information is created for each person every second on the planet. I'm old enough to remember when 1.7 megabytes of data was actually a fair amount of data. That's a long, long time ago, I realize, but just if you think about that per person per second, it's just enormous. And the big surprise with that is that today still only about 0.5%, so this is not a typo, doesn't mean 0.5, it's 0.5% of all the data that we actually generate is actively used and processed and analyzed for decision making. And that's, of course, a bit troubling. And one of the big reasons for that is that sometimes there's data collected that we don't need. And oftentimes, even though there is data collected that we do need, we don't have the people to actually do a good job of analyzing it and utilizing it in decision making. So for yourselves, if you think about the type of data that you yourselves are responsible for, that you generate, just look at the list here on my left. So, when you have a credit card transaction, or you do online purchasing or web browsing, or audio video streaming, any responses you have to emails or mail, your commercial support calls, let's say you're unhappy with your cell service, you call into the provider, you're not happy, anything you say there will be automatically recorded and transcribed and stored in a database. Any information that you provide yourself, as in through a survey or something like that, location information. Think about any free app that you install on your phone. It seems of paramount importance that they know where you are 24/7, every day, every hour. So that's location information. If you think about usage information, this is a big increase in data provided through IoT. So pretty much everything, every product that you can think about, they're already thinking about how to put a sensor in that. Companies like Mazda, with their newer cars, they're putting sensors in all of those. And so those are constantly wiring back to servers into the cloud and storing the data that you are generating as you engage with your car, let's say. And then, of course, everything that we post on social media, social networks. So there's an enormous amount of data available, and that offers a huge opportunity for businesses to create value for their customers and create value for their business. The big problem there is that it's not actually quite as easy as it sounds. Just the fact that you have data doesn't mean that you have the ability or the skill or even the people to actually do a good job with analyzing this data. Now, unfortunately, there's also not just problems about the people that would actually work with the data, there's also lots of problems at the tops of organizations. CEOs that are maybe not quite as attuned to data and technology think that they hear something about artificial intelligence and they just assume that, oh, we'll just throw artificial intelligence at it and that will fix all of my business problems. And of course, that's absolutely not true. There's a whole lot more involved in that. So just to give you an idea of what you would even need to do before you could even start thinking about doing anything with AI, you first of all have to start and really understand your data. And unfortunately, there's still a ton of companies that are at this phase. They're just trying to figure out how to better visualize and summarize their data and share that with people within the organization. So that's descriptive analytics. After you get good at that, then you might be in a position to start doing some predictive analytics. And so there we're talking about things like regression, decision trees, neural networks, deep learning, and so on. Really try to understand the patterns that are in your data and trying to make predictions about the future or predictions cross-sectionally. Like I know something about this set of customers. Does that hold when I look at other sets of customers, right? So that's predictive analytics. And so that's where a lot of the tutorials you might see on KDD or other sites, they focus very much on that. And that's not bad. That's definitely a very, very important skill to have. If you can't do good prediction, you're not going to be able to do good AI either. However, the next phase is at least as important, which is now that we have these new predictions, what are we supposed to do with it? What's the action or the change within our company that we're going to implement based on the information that we just generated with our models? And so that's what we call prescriptive analytics, right? What should we do now that we know something? For example, we predict or forecast sales for a particular product in an area. Suppose it's above some threshold, then we decide to do the following, right? We pay more for distribution, or we put in additional advertising or sales reps or something like that, right? So some type of decision making that goes with this. And that can involve simulation, that can involve optimization, could also just be a very simple decision rule. If it's above a threshold, we do one thing. If it's below a threshold, we do another thing, right? So that has to absolutely be paired onto the predictive analytics. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do anything useful. And then the final phase you could think about is where I think AI is really, really useful, is where it brings all of those pieces together. So I wanted to try one thing here. And again, I don't know how familiar you are all with Zoom, but if you click on the participants icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then click on yes or no, and the answer would be to the following question. Have you ever written in either Python or R or Excel an if-else statement? Okay, so just say yes or no. Okay, so I see that the vast majority of you are saying yes. And so if you think about it, the very basic idea of artificial intelligence is that you have some type of logic that tells you, depending on some outcome, show one thing or do one thing, and depending on if the outcome is different, you do something else. So congratulations, you've all done AI. Now, of course, that's stupid, right? I'm making a joke here. Where AI really gets useful is where it can do stuff that now a human has to do, right? And so if a human, let's say at Amazon, has to decide on prices for all the enormous number of products that they have, that's going to be incredibly difficult and incredibly time and cost intensive. So what Amazon is super interested in is there a way to take some of those pricing managers and give them a higher level role and automate some of these processes around pricing? And so that's really where I think AI has the biggest value in what I'll call dynamic prescriptive analytics. So there's data that comes into Amazon. They change their prices around. They learn about the effects of those price changes. And based on that, they make decisions what, let's say for the next 3 weeks, the price for a particular item could be. And as soon as people respond to those price changes, that data comes back into the front end. It's processed, it's analyzed, it's fed into the model. Maybe the model's updated. New recommendations are made about pricing, and so on and so forth, right? So it's an automated process. And that's maybe a bit different than the AI that you've been thinking about so far, but that's really the AI that companies are interested in, right? What processes can we automate in a way that it's even better than what a human can do? Now, unfortunately, the state of AI today is that the only places where you're going to be able to do this effectively is in contexts that are quite strongly constrained, right? Not a general problem, but a very more specific problem for this particular product sold through Amazon at this time. What is the best price? And the decision model is sufficiently rich that it can handle the different variations in data and predictions that you throw at it. Okay, so it's still quite limited, but if you imagine for one product, Amazon is able to pull this off very, very effectively. Okay, so those are basically the 4 stages of analytics that I like to think about. And I can tell you that the vast majority of companies are nowhere near here. That doesn't mean they don't try it. It doesn't mean they don't pay vendors ridiculous amounts of money for what they think will be the solution to all their problems. But they're nowhere near there, right? The vast majority of companies. The Amazons for sure, but they also have many, many areas where they have problems. I think it's a year or 2 ago that I talked to somebody who was just hired by Amazon. He said, one of my jobs is just to get rid of all the Excel files that are locked on everybody's hard drives. So literally people doing their own stuff in Excel files that's not shareable with anybody else. And if somebody comes into the company, there's nobody that knows anything about that Excel file except that one person whose computer it is. So companies are not nearly as smart as we like to think that they are. Okay, so what is one of the big reasons that companies are not able to do more with their data yet? Why they're struggling with all the mass influx of data and doing something useful with it, is because they lack people to really do a good job with this. Right? So this is a poll from LinkedIn that I've been tracking for years. Unfortunately, they changed some of the wording for the top 10 this year. Blockchain has come up. My guess is that blockchain is going to go up and down this list very rapidly over time. I don't think it's going to be a stable number one by any means. But cloud computing has been number 1 or 2 for the last 5 or 6 years. They recently changed statistical analysis and data mining to analytical reasoning. And so that's been 1, 2, or 3 the last 5 or 6 years. Artificial intelligence, of course, is huge. Business analysis is also data analysis, but very much in a business domain. Scientific computing also falls very much within the area of business analytics. And so you can see that there are at least 4 of the top 10 skills that are needed to find a good job that we cover within our program. Okay, so these skills are very much on demand. Now you notice that there's a block of stuff to the left of the hard skills, right? And you can see what that says. That says soft skills. And those are probably at least as important to success as are the hard skills. Okay? So we don't spend nearly as much time on those as maybe we should, because we also really enjoy talking about the hard skills, but you cannot ignore them. And we'll get back to that a little bit later on, right? But being creative, being persuasive, being able to communicate well, you know, you can run the most fantastic deep learning models of something, but if you cannot explain it to somebody else in a way that they can take value out of, sorry, you're just costing the company money because they're not making any value out of what you're doing. And that's really unfortunate for both you and the company. All right, so we've got a couple of different blocks that I want to talk about today. This was just a brief introduction to how we think about analytics very broadly. I want to talk again about a couple of topics. One is tools, because that's often something that students ask me about. What tools are we using in the classes? So I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about that. And then I want to dive into like a mini case study. Right? So just to give you an idea of what some of our capstone projects, which we'll also talk about in a minute, what types of problems you'll be working on in the program, okay? All right, so tools, especially when I talk to people who have a business background, one of the first things they'll ask me is, can we please just do everything in Excel? And the answer to that, sorry, is no. If you love Excel, and I know lots and lots of you probably do, you've used it extensively, pretty much everybody uses Excel, right? And it's great for the stuff that it's good at, right? And the thing that it's absolutely not good at is data analysis, right? So this particular example is one where you're using Solver to do some optimization, some linear programming, and it's fantastic for that. If you talk to somebody in accounting or in finance, they love using spreadsheets, right? But it's really not anything that you could use for any type of serious data analysis. So no, sorry, if that's what you're hoping for, that's not what we're going to do. So what are the tools that you should be familiar with, that you're going to be familiar with in preparation for the program, you're going to become very familiar with during the program? They're open source tools, right? So if you're a big fan of SPSS or SAS or Stata, again, I apologize, we're not going to use those. Right? They are still in business, and to a large extent, they are used in education. They are used in companies that have been using them for 10, 15, 20 years, and they have big legacy software repositories. They just find it very hard to move away from this. But any company worth its salt is getting their employees to learn R, to learn Python, and to be able to tap into all the stuff that's being developed in these languages now. I mean, they really are at the forefront of any type of development in statistics or machine learning. So the most powerful tools for data analysis in existence today, they run on any platform, which is great. Fantastic graphics, and for the Python lover, sorry, there is nothing better than ggplot for graphics at the moment. Maybe someday Python will catch up to that. I know they're trying hard, but we'll see how that goes. I would love to say that Python also has a great package management system. I just really cannot tell you that. They have about 5 or 6 ones that are pretty good, but there's really nothing that compares to CRAN. We'll talk about some of the pros and cons of all of those things down the line. R is used by the vast majority of academic statisticians, and Python is used by many, many academic computer scientists. And why would you care about that? Because these people are thinking about and developing new algorithms, new ways to optimize neural networks, new ways to think about how to classify images, things like that. And when they do, they often develop packages that go with the research that they've done and publish those. So as an example, a couple of years ago, a couple of folks at Google developed this new library that allowed you to make causal inference from time series models. And great tool, used widely within Amazon, and they decided to share that publicly. So it's an R package that you can just download and install and start utilizing. And so that's fantastic. That's not something that's possible with commercial tools like SAS or Stata or anything like that. So both R and Python are fantastic. You have probably seen flame wars online about, no, you should use R, no, absolutely you should Python, you should use Python, and so on. We love both. We think they're both great. And so you're going to learn both. I would say that the biggest strength by far of R over Python is in the area of statistics. Python is working hard on that, but it's probably going to be at least 5 or more years before they're as good at that. The thing that's most popular in Python for doing analysis is scikit-learn, which is a fantastic library. Also there, I'd say that R is making great strides, but we're going to introduce you to both of those tools and you're going to become very familiar with them. But really, you should just consider the fact that there really is no one tool that rules them all. There is no one best tool for everything. And so it depends on the type of problem you're trying to solve. And just to give you an idea of the types of problems that you're going to be using and get very familiar with throughout the program, we've got R, RStudio, Radiant, Python, Jupyter, VS Code, if you've used that before. I'm a big fan of editors, so if you haven't checked out VS Code, I highly recommend it. We need a database, so we're going to use Postgres. For larger databases, we're going to look at Hadoop and Spark. And Bash, the very old tool, is still very useful for work on servers. So you're going to learn about all of those tools. And a big part of the program is programming. So the program is not about making you a programmer. Okay, if you wanted to do that, you choose another program. What you want to be able to do, or what I'm inferring you want to be able to do, is to use data and create products and services and ideas and manipulate the data in a way that can lead to great and creative insights that companies can use to improve their decision-making and create value for their customers. Okay, and so that requires programming. So you're not going to be the same as somebody coming out of an undergrad in CS. Some of you may have an undergrad in CS. They know how to do programming in any language very well from a theoretical perspective. We're going to teach you how to do programming using data, right? That's first and foremost, the key thing we're going to focus on is how do you use programming tools to work with data? And they're so much more flexible than anything else you could do in any type of other tool. Now, why is that a big benefit? It allows you to create what's called reproducible analysis, right? So if you do stuff in Excel, and I'm sure you've all done this, is you might change some data manually, right? There's maybe a problem somewhere in your data, so you click on the cell, you make the change, and you save it, and you're done. Right? But there's no record of anything that you just did, right? Unless you're one of those people that meticulously keeps notes of everything you do, nobody will know what you just changed. Right? So you have to write code because it becomes a script, a reproducible document that shows how exactly did you tackle this problem? How did you solve it? Right? What analysis did you do? What transformation did you have to do to clean up the data and so on? So writing code is an incredibly important part of the program, but again, very, very applied to business problems. All right, now, that said, once you create the code, what are you supposed to do with it? Okay, so if you create save code and want to just hand this off to a business partner, they will at the very least be confused and more likely be more than just confused, okay? Managers do not like to work with code. So you have to find a way to translate the insights and the ideas and the findings from your analysis in a way that they can work with, right? That they would get enthusiastic about and say, yes, absolutely, what you just told me, that is far better than what I've been doing. We're going to start implementing that in business. And so you need to be able to communicate, to be able to tell stories. I know that sounds weird. To be able to tell stories with the data through visualization, through tables, through presentations. All of that is an essential component of creating value out of your work. Again, if all you can do is build fantastic deep learning models, again, great skill to have, but if you can tell anybody about it, you're never going to get anywhere. Okay? So that's a little bit about tools, kind of a flash job there, I realize, but I just wanted to jump through that very quickly. And what I want to do next, so you have a bit of an idea of what type of tool set you're going to be preparing to use in the program. We'll talk more about preparation in a few minutes, is to walk you through a little mini case study. And the mini case study is related to a capstone project that one of our teams is working on right now. Again, we're only going to have about maybe 10, 15 minutes to work on this, but I'm going to introduce a problem to you and then ask you to get in groups. I'm going to create groups with a feature in Zoom called breakout rooms. It's going to be a bit weird because you don't know anybody yet, but try to be your most outgoing self for a few minutes and try to interact with each other. Again, I'll place you in those groups in a minute. Again, you won't know anybody. We will try to hop in and out of some of these breakout rooms and try to see what you're up to, what you're talking about. I highly recommend, if you can, that you turn on your camera once you're in the breakout room. right? It's just easier to talk to people if you can see them. All right, so let me introduce the case study. Again, this is a capstone project we're working on right now. The project is under NDA, non-disclosure agreement, so we can't tell you specifically what the bank is that we're working with, but I can tell you a couple of things about the project, and I'm going to show you some disguised data and results. Okay. So the capstone partner, again, is a bank. They want to optimize credit limits, and so basically to figure out this person, should we give them a higher credit limit or not? And should we give them an additional 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, or even more increase in credit limit, right? That's the big problem they're trying to figure out. And so the data that they have some information about the customers, the students do, right? So the students have been shared this data from the company, some information about the different accounts, the transaction data over time, the credit limit changes that the bank used over time, right? So they have actually implemented these credit card changes over time, and some measure of customer profitability. So again, I can't show you the actual measure of that. So I've got a normalized version of it because they would freak out if I gave you the actual profit numbers, of course, so I can't do that, but a normalized version of that. And the data is about 100 gigabytes, right? So it's not enormous, but definitely way too big to do anything on your laptop with. So in addition to that, we know something about the decision process, which is that the bank looks at all the information they have about a customer and then makes a decision using a decision rule. Should we increase this person's, based on their characteristics, increase their credit limit, yes or no? Okay, everybody okay so far? I can see some people, so if you give me a nod, then I'll be comfortable. Thank you very much, appreciate that. All right, so what they want to determine is, what is the impact of increasing somebody's credit limit on the profitability of their customer, right? So that's what they're hoping for. If we increase the credit limit, we hope that this customer will become more profitable, right? That's the general idea. And so if we plot for a particular customer, I'm just picking a customer, let's call them C2. Let's show what their graph looks like. Now in week 21 in this data set, there was an increase in credit limit of $5,000. Okay, so, and this is the measure of normalized profitability. Again, so you can't infer what the actual profitability is for this customer, but it just hovers around the values that are normalized here. And so in week 21 is where the credit limit increase happened, right? So looking at this graph, it's not that straightforward to see what happened, right? Was there any type of impact, yes or no, right? I'm assuming that you're similar to me and that's just not easy to see from the graph. So what I'm going to show you is some outputs, some predictions from two different models. The first one is a random forest, and the second one is a linear regression. Okay. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time fine-tuning these, so there's definitely more fine-tuning that could be done with these. But even if you look at that, it's not necessarily that obvious exactly what happened, right? So here's a little extra output, and I'm about to get to the ask, right, where I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. This is the output from the linear regression model for this particular customer, right? And again, week 21 is where the increase in credit limit occurred. And this is the output you get from a random forest, right? So there's not a whole lot of output that you get from a random forest. On the right-hand side are what are called partial dependence plots, which basically is an attempt to graph the effect of a change in one variable on the predicted value, right? And the predicted value here is profitability for a customer. All right, so here comes the question. And so if you're confused, before you go into the breakout room, this would absolutely be the time to raise it, because once you're in the breakout room, it's a little harder to communicate, as you'll find. So my question for you is, what are your major concerns with the analysis that I showed you in the previous two slides? Okay, could be anything, right? So I want you to brainstorm with a couple of people in your breakout group, and then discuss that, and then come back and provide some highlights of your recommendations, okay? Now, we are not going to hold you to a particularly high standard, right? So if you say something that we don't agree with, we are not going to make fun of you or anything like that, right? We just want you to think about it as best you can. We're really just throwing this at you. You had no idea or no preparation, and I know that's not very fair, but we're just throwing this problem at you just to get a bit of a flavor of the types of things you want to try and think about. Now, I'm going to put this link, or at least try to, let's see if I can. Yeah, I have it here. I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat window. So you have to open the chat window. Okay, so there's two links. The first link, if you click on that, it will give you the information that I just showed you, right? It'll take you to a Google Sheet. So please go ahead and try that now and see if it opens up Google Sheet for you. I'm seeing some nodding, so that's good. Great, thank you very much. for that. So that's the data you have. You're going to be able to visualize, use that, because you won't be able to see my screen once you're in the breakout room. Okay, so use that. We're going to jump in. Are there any questions about what I'm asking you to do? And feel free to unmute if you have a question. Okay, so I just want you to get into the room. Again, we're going to make this about 4 people. Yeah, something like that. So there's going to be, okay, we're a fair number of people this evening local time. So we're going to create groups of, let's say, 5 people. And again, try to talk to each other and think about what you see on the slides and what you think is confusing or what you learned from that. Again, this is not an easy problem. I'm just trying to get you to think about the general problem that this capstone project group is trying to work through. Okay, and then we'll come back and have a discussion about it. All right, so I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. Okay, so I'm going to make it 5 people. All right, and so we are going to jump in and out. Again, what I'd recommend as soon as you get to the breakout room is that you turn on your video. Okay, if it doesn't work or if it distorts, then turn it back off again. But again, it's a heck of a lot easier to talk to people once you're looking at them face to face. All right, so again, we will jump into a couple of the groups. We're not going to be able to jump into all of them, but we'll give you something like 5 minutes, right, to discuss. All right, so here we go. All right. Wow. I think I did something very wrong. Okay. Okay, for those of you that's still here, I did something wrong. I apologize. For some reason, it made 4 groups of 25 rather than 25 groups of 4. So the other people will be coming back in 1 minute. This is my mistake. I apologize. Unfortunately, it takes a couple seconds before everybody gets back. So if you're not in a breakout room yet, then that's completely fine. Okay. So I think everybody is back. My apologies. I I did something wrong in creating the rooms. So what I wanted to do, so this was a typo on my end. I am going to, let's see what happens if I do that. Yes. Okay. So instead of creating 20 rooms with 4 or 5 people in it, I did the exact reverse. My bad. Apologies. So I'm going to try that again. Again, I'm going to recreate the rooms here. There should be 20 now. I'm going to change one option here. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's recreate. Yep. So 20 rooms. So 3 to 4 people. Let's see. Yep. All right. So here we go. We're going to try this one more time. See if it works this time. And open all the rooms. Let's see if this works. That looks a lot better. Okay, so I'm not sure why I'm seeing some people on my screen here. Okay, so there are some people that I'm seeing on my screen. Here we go. So you may need to press accept. It should have pushed you into your breakout room automatically. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So assign to, I don't know why that's happening. All right. Okay, so Terry, if you click on the, can you click on the breakout room icon?
Yeah. For
Okay.
me, it's just asking me to join.
Okay,
Join
so
one.
just join one.
Okay. Go ahead and do it.
Yep.
All right.
And then come, you should be able to come back out in a little bit. This is not an easy task. Again, I sprung this on you. I thought it might be an interesting idea to bring this up and have you kind of be confronted with something that people are doing towards the end of their program, right? They're building all kinds of different models based on large databases from real companies and trying to come up with recommendations. And I'm assuming you will agree that that's not straightforward, right? It's not that easy to figure out exactly what you're supposed to do with this. So are there any pieces of the output? And I think you can see the output on my screen now again, right? On the screen I'm sharing. I can show you that here as well, by the way. Yes. So are there any pieces of the output that concerns you, right? As we're trying to make a recommendation on whether or not increasing the credit limit leads to an increase in profit of that customer for the company, right? So that there was one question in the chat about what is the why? Well, the why is the profitability of the customer, right? And we're trying to see, if that is affected by the increase in credit limit, right? Because if that works, if increasing somebody's credit limit is a good thing, then if that's a good thing, then they want to do that more, right? Or at least for some customers. And if it's a bad thing, they want to reconsider, right? So they want to look at different customers, look at their profiles, look at the information they have about them, and be able to make an informed decision based on data, based on analysis. Do we increase or do we not increase, right? For some customers, it might be a bad idea. For other customers, it might be a great idea, right? It'd be nice to say everybody has unlimited credit limit, right? But at that point, you're probably going to get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. Okay, so is anybody willing to speak up and say some things that they saw in the output that they thought were, confusing or problematic or anything like that? Again, so feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to put it in the chat, you can do that too.
So our group looked at the difference between the prediction from the forest ranger graph and the linear regression graph.
Yep.
And we basically looked at how they kind of give different long-term predictions. The linear looks at it, the linear and the long-term, there's the initial spike, but then as time goes on, it decreases. Whereas with the ranger one, you see it best in one of the following slides where it takes the average and shows the blue line increasing over time. So one shows a decrease in the long run, the other shows an increase in the long run.
Right.
Another thing is that we kind of said there was less weight on the linear one just because the scale was so much smaller. Like the entire y-axis that we see is 0.02, whereas the other one is 1 or 0.7, 0.8.
Right.
So a much higher scale there.
Right. So great points. If you just look at the graph, the third graph on the right in the screen that I'm sharing, you can see that, right? Just to confirm, so this one?
No, we just
can't see it. Okay, then my share screen must have been turned off. Sorry about that. Okay, is it back on?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So on the right-hand side graph here, right? So it looks like if we're perfectly true, it looks like it's going down, then it goes up, and then it starts going back down again, right? So if those paths going down are the same, are parallel, then we still have a positive increase, right? We still have a benefit that we achieved. It's just that overall, that path for that customer just seems to be going down. We've just moved that whole thing up, right? So you could still consider that a positive. The random forest one, in general, you'd say random forest, you've probably heard of this as a tool, right? It's very widely used, very powerful, fantastic predictions that it generates. It looks pretty messy though, right? It's kind of hard to figure out what that's doing. And absolutely a fantastic point that you raised, which is the scale, right? So let me show you the scale for this graph, right? So if I look at these dots here, this is a partial dependence plot that you can create from a random forest. The random forest doesn't provide you with coefficients, but this looks like a big difference, right? Just visually, if you just look at the graph. But if you look at the scale, it's tiny, right? Now, we don't know exactly how much that is, but I can tell you it's not a lot of money, right? Okay, so it's hard to tell from these, right? You just get some graphs. It does look, if I look at this regression model, you might have looked at something like R square. R square is the amount of variation in the response variable, which in this case is the profit, the customer profit. How much of that is explained by our model? And that's less than 4%. Okay, so that's not fantastic. And then if we look at, and if you've ever seen our output often has these little stars on the end here, which suggest something about significance, statistical significance. neither of these are statistically significant. So basically what you can say from this is that model is just not overly useful. Okay, so if the company is trying to make a prediction based on what they just have, which is data from customer 2, they're not able to do a very good job, right? And so they may see that there's a small positive increase that sort of looks like it a little bit, but there's not really a lot that they can say about this, okay? So a couple of problems that I'll just, because we're running a little short on time, and just give you some of the things to think about that you might not have thought about before, right? Was the increase in credit limit to customer 2, was that assigned randomly? What do you think? Is that something that banks are likely to do? Probably not, at least I hope not, right? I would not want to work for a bank that does that. So what if week 21 was the date of lockdown, right? Where everybody had to stay home, where C2, customer C2 lives, right? Now that would be a period where maybe there would have been a decrease in their spending, right? Because we're not going out and spending all kinds of stuff and having fun with our friends and doing whatever, right? They're just home now. And so maybe that was the period where there was the lockdown that happened. So how do we know what would have happened if we had not implemented this increase in credit limit, right? That's the real question that we want to answer. If we would want to be able to compare a scenario where we have the credit limit increase versus a scenario where we don't have the credit limit increase, right? That would be the ideal scenario. But you can't have that, right? That would mean we'd need two identical worlds where the only thing that changes is you get an increase in credit limit in world A and you don't get an increase in credit limit in world B, right? But that doesn't actually exist. So what we need is somebody who looks just like customer C2 in all regards, except we've decided for whatever reason not to give them a credit limit increase, right? Maybe we just don't do everybody that looks the same or has the same characteristics at the same time. We sort of do this in a phased approach. So we need a baseline. And so it's not an experiment. So we need to go looking in our data. And this is a tool called matching or propensity score matching you can use for this. Find somebody that looks just like this person, but hasn't had a credit limit increase yet. Right? And so now we've got a basis for comparison. We can see what happened to customer C1. Let's say that's customer that looks just like in all attributes C2, but they didn't get the credit limit increase, right? And so what I can do then is I can estimate a linear regression or a random forest that tries to take that information into account. And now let's take a look at the two prediction graphs. Right? Now I have a base for comparison, which is customer C1, that's the red graph. And if we don't give that person, and that person again is in all aspects the same that we know about, the same as customer C2, right? That person is seeing a dip, a decrease, a significant decrease in their spending and their profitability. But relative to that, customer C2, the person who got the credit limit increase, they're seeing a small increase in profit. Right? But what is the real thing that they care about, the bank, is the difference between these two afterwards. Right? The difference between C1 and C2. That is what tells them what the impact is of the credit limit increase. Right? So there's no way to know that for sure if you're only looking at the information for C2. Okay. Now, I am 100% confident that the vast majority of you could estimate definitely the linear regression models, but also the random forest that I just showed you. Right? It's not that hard to run a random forest model. Right? There's plenty of tutorials out there. If you haven't done it before, anybody can run it. But the key thing is to be able to think about how do I tease out from the output from these models, what actually is the result? What is the information that I'm going to tell to the bank? Because if I tell the bank, look, we find a really tiny increase, they're going to say, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't be increasing people's credit limits. But if I get a better estimate of how effective that actually is, then all of a sudden they're going to say, oh, wow, for this type of a person, right, the person that are just like C1 and C2, we should definitely be considering giving these people credit limit increases, right? But there's some people, other people with different characteristics where doing this would be horrible because they just max out on their credit, go party, get drunk, right? Have lots and lots of fun, but then default on their loans, right? So they need to be able to differentiate based on their model, based on these characteristics that somebody has, should we or should we not? And you have to be able to figure out relative to a base case, what's the real effect, right? And so this is the stuff that is not just plain modeling, not just plain statistics or machine learning, again, that anybody with enough dedication can learn pretty easily, but you want to figure out what's the real effect. Okay, does this make sense? Again, I know this is a hard problem because this is stuff that our students in spring are now trying to deal with, right? How do we figure out what the real effect is? Right? And that's not straightforward. It's pretty easy if you set up a formal experiment. Some of you may have done that in the past. But if it's not an experiment, you have to really think through, how do I tease out what the real effect is, right? And so this is one way in which you can do that. Okay, hope that got you a little bit of a flavor of what's going on. Again, I know we're running out of time a little bit. So Terry, are you okay if we skip over the maximization part? Yeah. So of course, that was only one part of the capstone project, right? That is first determine what is the actual effect of increasing somebody's credit limit. And once you have an idea of that, what should the actual amount be that we increase the credit limit? Should it be 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, 200,000? What's the right amount? And again, it's going to depend and different from person to person. Right? So there's a whole lot of thinking you need to do about what is the actual right amount and how do I think about optimizing this? Okay. And so one point, and sorry, I'm kind of stealing Terry's thunder here, skipping through some of these slides because of time. The main thing that I think we wanted to say here at the end is you want to think about, first of all, when you're doing data science, do I have a high value project, yes or no? Right? Is this something that is likely to be used within my organization? Can I do something to increase value to the company? And so then you're going to go into your wheelhouse, which is apply data science to these business problems, right? You got all the data, you got all the model, all the technology, you're doing all the work, right? And then of course, the outcome should be, first of all, there should be a useful decision that can be made based on what you provided, right? If you just provide code or just some coefficients, the manager may not have any idea what they're supposed to do with that. But if you can make it communicated in a clear story what exactly the benefits are, and you can show them that there's a large benefit, a large delta, right? That's what this says. Then yes, it's worthwhile to pursue. But then the key thing here at the end is it going to get implemented or not? Because if it's not implemented, how much value have you been able to create with all the hard work that you've done for the organization and for the customers? Zero, right? You're just going to be immensely frustrated because you are going to, like our students, hardworking, very ambitious, and they're going to work their tail off trying to get stuff like this implemented. But if it doesn't to get this to work, but if it doesn't get implemented by the organization, you haven't done anything of value, right? And that's really frustrating for you. So learn all the skills, learn all the modeling, but also learn how to communicate it to somebody. And some of you are more shy than others. That's going to be a bit of a struggle in the beginning, but it's absolutely going to pay off for you down the line. Okay. All right. So I'll let Ray just give you a quick overview of what the capstone projects are. Ray, if you would.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. I'll go quickly. A lot of stuff that Vince said is actually now applied in the capstone project. These are real world projects with the companies, which you'll see on the next slide, where you really get to apply your knowledge and do the real data science for business work, apply it to a business problem. You also learn, obviously, problem solving, communication skills, learn how to design a project, manage it, and practice teamwork, which is extremely important. Next slide is capstone partner companies. I'll just linger on this for a second. We have about 25 to 30 companies we work with regularly. Some do projects every year, others stagger them. And the projects are set up and supervised by a team of 3. There's a managing, like a business advisor, which would be myself. We actually have another person that does it from Google, analytic person from Google who supervises projects, highly skilled. And then we have a technical advisor who comes to us from the Qualcomm Institute on campus. It's the engineering school. And she works on that projects with you in terms of the technical side of things. And then we also have a communications advisor, Allison Meyer, who actually has worked at Berkeley and also for Apple in communications. So you get this 3-pronged team working with you on every project to get beyond just the data science work to actually applying the results to the business problem. You can see the companies are definitely nationwide. We're not limited to just San Diego. Work with companies around the country, in some cases overseas as well.
And then Terry and I also do a midterm review and a final review. So there's an oral exam at the very end of the program, again, just to make sure that you've internalized everything. And again, we do a midterm review as well to kind of see how you're doing, how is the project making progress, and so on. Okay.
I'll say one more thing too, for the capstones. And this is important to know, so we practice what we preach. We elicit your preferences. We run an integer optimization routine to form these groups. And so generally speaking, and again, there's no guarantees, but in the past, we've gotten people all preferences matched up to like their top 4 capstone projects. So if there were like 16 projects, almost everybody had one of their top 4. And so again, using the optimization routines that we do, we can achieve kind of pretty efficient outcomes in that regard.
Right.
And the projects are set up more and more to become a pipeline. You do your capstone, internships can follow, and then of course jobs. Of course, there's been a glitch this year with the pandemic, but that pipeline, companies are catching on to that and doing capstone, intern, job. So you get into a nice flow for jobs in the future.
Okay, so a couple of things to wrap up that I wanted to tell you about as you kind of get ready mentally, physically, and kind of in terms of education, getting ready for the program. We're very much hands-on, right? So we don't have a lot of classes where we just talk about the theory of statistics or the theory of machine learning. It's very much an applied program, right? So if you want to kind of jump in from day one and really start doing stuff with data and programming and analytics, then ours is going to be a good program. We're also going to ask all of you to start working on a bunch of courses on DataCamp. Okay, so we have an arrangement that you would get free access to all the courses that are on DataCamp. That would be starting from June 15th. So our program doesn't start until, like, the orientation is around September 15th. But we're going to show you an email in a second. Actually, I already put that in the chat. I'll put it in the chat again. So for those of you that have deposited and that have kind of decided that you're coming, I'm going to put this in the chat now. Please provide the email address you want us to use to give you free access to DataCamp. Okay, so if you decided you don't want to come, sorry, that's very unfortunate. If you've decided you do want to come, then put your information in there. And again, starting June 15th, you will have access to the entire library of everything that DataCamp has to offer. It's a great way to get ready for programming. They're generally pretty small problems, but it's a great way to get up to speed with both R and Python. Okay, so please put the email in the form. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to a form, and that would be where you provide your information. Okay, so these are the 9 assignments that we have for you. So all of those have to be completed before you arrive on campus. So there are 4 related to R. There are 4 related to Python and 1 related to, like, a chapter related to Bash. Again, these are not going to be super hard, but if you haven't done any Python before, or if you've done Python but never done R, then of course it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but definitely doable. So we were going to be expecting you to have gone through all of that. And then actually what's going to happen when you arrive, or right before the program starts, is you're going to have you do an intake exam. Right? So we're going to assess your skill in programming and math, and based on that, decide if you need to take a particular course or not. So there's a really intensive course that it's math and programming for business analytics, that if you're below a certain threshold, you're going to be required to go into that class. And if you're well above that threshold, you can choose if you want to take the class, yes or no. Right? So it's open to anybody to take. But if you're below a certain threshold, you absolutely have to take it. Right? And the idea being that we want everybody to have a really strong skill set in programming and math starting into fall. Right? So this is right before fall, we're going to do this class. But going into fall, that you're ready to participate in the rigorous classes that we have for you. Okay? I'm going to skip over this just in the interest of time. To give you a little bit of an idea, because you know that we changed the program structure this year. Usually we start in summer 2, which is a period at UCSD, which starts right at the beginning of August. Because of COVID, we've pushed that back to fall. So it has had a couple of implications in terms of when classes start. So our orientation is going to start around mid-September. You're going to get detailed information about that from Rady. And again, there we're going to have this class called Introduction to Math and Programming for Business Analytics. Not required in general. However, if you score below a certain threshold on the assignment, then we will require you to take that class. And then in fall, we're going to have Business Analytics for Marketing, Finance, and Operations. That was usually a class we had in summer, but that's now in fall. Collecting, Analyzing Large Data, and Business Analytics. Those were always in fall. Those are all 3 core classes. And then Data-Driven Communications. That's not a core class. It's not required, but highly recommended. Right? So if you buy my story that you can do the most fantastic deep learning model, but if you can't communicate it to the company or to your capstone sponsor, they're not going to be able to use it. Right? So communication is something you absolutely do not want to underestimate. Okay? And then internship is scheduled for summer. There were some questions about this from different people to Emily. Even if there is some part of fall being online, as in through Zoom, right? We'll still have lots of live sessions and interaction. But if you're not able to get to campus, maybe you weren't able to get a visa or anything like that, then that will still count towards your year to be able to be on campus technically, right? Even if you're doing this from India or from China or from Taiwan or from South America, wherever it might be, that's still going to count towards your full year. So you will be able to get an internship and do CPT, right? So that has been confirmed for us. And then kind of a last piece here, the Rady program is really not for the faint of heart, right? We do a lot of data analysis, a lot of programming, getting your hands dirty, lots of cases and projects, lots of discussion and preparation. And so that's why I have this special mug here on the side, warning you have been warned, because you should be warned, right? It's going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to be intense, right? A year will fly over, and it's going to be done before you know it, but you're going to have a lot of fun with us, I guarantee it, okay? If you come in with the right attitude. If you're coming in here and say, you know, I'm just going to kind of waltz through and not invest in people, not invest in working in teams, not invest in really deeply learning everything, no, you're probably not going to have a lot of fun. But if you're willing to roll up your sleeves, kind of work in your team and get stuff done, I can virtually guarantee you're going to have a blast here. Okay, so what do you get out of all of this? Is you're going to get stuff that's directly applicable, right? You're not going to have to think about, but I learned this interesting theoretical concept in class, and now I'm working at a company and I don't really see what the connection is. So now I have to spend several months figuring out how do I actually apply this in practice, right? That's not going to be your problem, right? You're going to be able to take exactly what we teach you in classes through cases, assignments, capstone projects, and apply it from day one, right? It's incredibly practical. So a couple other questions just to wrap up, and we'll be open for questions after if you have as well. Since the MSBA program begins later, maybe online, this is actually what I just said. Fall is going to count, right? No matter if you're not able to get your VC yet or arrive right on the start of fall. Fall has been, you know, our chancellor and the president of the university has said that campus will be open, right? That said, there's going to be lots of testing, lots of stuff going on to try to ensure that there's no problems, kind of maintain the safety of students and faculty. Right, so there's a lot of steps that they're taking. We're happy to share you more information about that if you're concerned, but there's going to be a lot of testing going on, again, to make sure that we don't run into any trouble. And then there was a question about, since we'll be graduating in December, how much time will we have to secure a job and get OPT? Nothing has changed there, right? That's exactly the same as it was before. The quarter officially ends a little earlier. I think it's like right before Christmas. I think the last days of class will be for winter, but it's actually scheduled to end December 31st, right? So that gives you another week or so extra. And so OPT, everything like that will all work the same as it always has. So if you have questions about that, there's a group on campus called ISPO, ISPO, that can answer any of the questions that you have around that. I know it's a complicated topic. Whenever somebody tells me about these regulations, it kind of goes in one ear and goes straight out the other. It's very hard for me to keep straight, but there's plenty of resources around that. And so if you have questions, please do reach out. We're happy to try and help you. Okay. And then another question was around, well, what does the job market look like? You know what? We really don't know what the job market's going to look like 12 months from now or 17 months from now. That said, there is evidence coming out that one of the areas that's relatively speaking doing well, even in the current climate, is analytics. Right? There are definitely internships and projects that are being stalled or being postponed, but there's not the massive reduction in some areas that you see, right? So if you're going into a program that would get you into an airline or into a travel industry, then yeah, maybe that's not so fantastic right now. But analytics, relatively speaking, is holding quite strong. It's not as good as it was, but it will definitely, we anticipate it will perk up quite dramatically. In fact, there's so many people are going to be working remotely that, you know, doing things remotely, being able to work with data remotely with servers, being able to do big data analysis and share that efficiently with your other co-workers is definitely going to be a very valuable skill to have. So we don't anticipate any serious problems in the US market with analytics in the long term. Now where we are now, it's kind of hard to see exactly what's going to happen because we don't know what's going to happen from week to week. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I do. Is that, you know, I ask, what day is it today? I know it's today, right? But what is tomorrow? It's just, they all blur together a little bit. So I hope that will go away soon. Okay, so that was our kind of blitz overview of some of the key components of things that might interest you in our program. Thank you for your attention and for participating. And if you have any questions, please do let us know. Just feel free to unmute and we'll answer any questions that you raise.
Hi, I'm not sure if everyone is seeing the same thing, but I seem to only have the chat from the breakout room still.
Huh.
So I'm not seeing the link that you
Yeah,
just
same.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's the same for me as well.
Chat. Okay, how do I do this? let me go back to the slide where that is. Okay, it's here. So I simplified the link. I do see on my chat window also Zoom group chat. I don't know why that is, but if I close it and reopen it, it doesn't go away. So the link is https://bit.ly/Rady-datacamp. Okay, so I'll just leave this.
Oh, someone just sent it, I think.
Oh, great.
On the chat. I don't know. I just got it, but I don't know if everyone did.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it came to everybody.
Seeing it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I just sent it.
Thanks. Yeah, for whatever reason, it just says Zoom group chat on my window. I don't know why. So I actually haven't. So a lot of my faculty colleagues have taught in spring using Zoom. I have not. I just had 2 Zoom sessions at the end of winter quarter, and those went pretty well. But I'm definitely going to practice my skills so breakout rooms go a little more smoothly when you get to campus. Right. So there's a question about on UCSD pass no pass courses. I don't think that that's going to be a problem with courses in your undergrad, but feel free to reach out to Emily specifically if you want to talk about that. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Any other questions?
I had another question regarding preparation for the course. In the beginning, you had that slide about descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, prescriptive, and AI.
Yes.
When we are coming into the program, it seems like with this data camp course, are we expected to be versed in all of the 4 a little bit or more towards the beginning of that, or how is that going to look in this program?
So what the data camp courses are really about is to get you up to speed with programming, right? Not so much predictive or prescriptive or any of those components per se. There's plenty of other courses on data camp, by the way, if you want to kind of dive into that already, right? That's absolutely a good idea if you can find the time. But really what we need everybody to be able to do is from day one to be able to program a computer effectively, right? Because the problems you're going to see are not those where here's a data set and you don't have to do much with the data set. You just kind of run some models. You have to be able to transform the data, to pull the data from various places, to combine it, to merge it, clean it, all those types of things, right? And there's estimates that you see sometimes where they say, well, 80% of a data scientist's work is actually data munging. Not sure that's always true, but it's definitely worthwhile to spend a lot of time thinking about how do I make sure that the data that I pull in from the web, from JSON files over here, from internet server logs, from all over the place, how do I bring that together, clean it up, structure it, put it together in a data frame, and then analyze it, right? And so that's really where the programming helps a ton. In addition, at some point, whatever you create should go in production, right? As in it starts predicting on a larger scale for various problems, for various customers who you should target or not target, and so on. And so being able to program and code this in a way that's reproducible and that can be easily integrated in other business functions is going to be super helpful. Right? So this is more about the programming part. We'll work on that with you throughout the program, but this is just to make sure you're ready to be able to handle all the business problems and more in-depth case discussions that you're going to have to challenge to face with. Now, if you spend, let's say, 8 hours just figuring out how to do fix a small bug in code, then you're going to be struggling to get to the deep insight, right? And so we don't want that to happen. We want you to be ready to jump in straight away with the code.
Perfect.
And kind of said differently, like in going through the program, you will understand those different pillars really well, and then hopefully be poised in kind of a position ready to tackle the last one, which is the 4th one, where you're automating everything, right? So that would require a really solid understanding and ability to code as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's the confusing part. It almost seemed like, are we expected to be able to do some of this stuff before we get here, or is this what we're growing into in the program? I'm coming in with, I think, a lot less technical skills than probably a lot of other people in the program. So for me personally, it's like, is it, how much of this am I going to learn during the program? What are we going to learn before, and that kind of stuff? But that very much eased all of my concerns. Thank you.
Right. So So very good point. I'd say that if you can get some exposure to it, look at some tutorials, things like that, kind of get a little bit of an idea of what it is, that's definitely useful. The more you want to do, the better. But yes, we will absolutely dive into all of these things in great depth and make sure that you deeply understand how you're supposed to apply them and use them, right? I'd say the biggest preparations that you can do is make sure that you're ready with programming. Again, that can really slow you down if you just struggle on that. If you have to debug for 8 hours before you can get to what their case is really about, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Another question I saw here about statistics courses, there's a bunch of them. I would say that the better you can be at regression, right? Linear regression in particular as a starting point is super useful because really everything builds on that, right? Once you understand the concepts of linear regression really well, then learning something about boosted decision trees or neural networks becomes a lot easier, right? So definitely that's useful to kind of take a look at in advance if you can.
These data camp courses that are on your screen right now, they're all free, right, for us?
They're like a couple of them are, but if you sign up for data camp by giving us the email address, then we can give you free access to all data camp courses, including these.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
so they have a whole ton more courses. So again, if you have the time and the energy and the passion, you can go through all of data camp. That would be a bit of a challenge, I think, but you could do it if you wanted to. But a couple of these are free, but I think six or seven of them are not, right? So yes, if you send us the email, we'll check that to see if you're a deposited student, and then we will give you free access starting June 15th.
Okay.
And we've seen that in the past too, where folks kind of work through these modules and are like, hey, I'm feeling good, and just went a little crazy in data camp and started doing another 10, 20 modules. So I think that's fine as well. If you're that gung ho, that's even better.
Doctor, if I might ask one last question.
Please.
So it's not specific to the program, it's a little bit more general since I have all of you all here on the same call. So I think one of the things that we saw amidst the pandemic is how broken the supply chain is.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering how you think it's going to evolve or change once we come out of this COVID-19 pandemic.
So we have an expert in this area, so I'm going to put him on the spot right now. Shin, do you want to share your thoughts?
Not a problem. So if you think about the supply chain, on the one hand, I have kind of mixed feelings about this horrible pandemic. But on the other hand, one thing that surprised me is because of this pandemic, nowadays everyone knows supply chain, right? Before this pandemic, people were saying, "What is the supply chain?" Now everyone knows supply chain, right? So in terms of the supply chain, here is, I think, what will happen. And here is also what I think what will not happen, right? If you think about the supply chain, the key is everything in motion is good for supply chain. Everything that's not moving is bad for supply chain, right? And the key is, if you think about inventory, for example, if you are stuck with the inventory, it's not moving, that's actually bad for the supply chain. That's bad for your financials. It just costs you more. That used to be the case, right? Now with this pandemic, still the case, but less so, right? Because people are saying, hey, let's go lean and let's go with the lean operations. We don't need to keep that much of an inventory. Actually, it's better not to keep too much of an inventory. So what I think will happen is this, related to in particular that things in motion versus things that we keep just in case. Right? First of all, in majority of the products, still it's hard to beat just in time, right? Things in motion is much better than things stuck as an inventory, right? Nonetheless, there are some essential products, right? Let's say hand sanitizers or PPEs or the ventilators, right? For those in the country level, just a little bit of a redundancy, right? Just a little bit of redundancy or a little bit of flexibility will go a long way. Right? So for those products, I think it will change. Things like, let's say, when there is a big financial crisis, companies came up with this, or even the governments came up with this stress test, right? So for some particular products, I am sure that the governments will come up something similar, just in case. Right? However, For others, let's say toilet papers, it is what it is. I don't think even after pandemic, all of a sudden companies will keep tons of toilet papers just in case. It won't come, right? That won't change. Right? So I think there will be some things change, like essential products, life-threatening products, in particular on the country level. But other things, I don't think it will change. It will be a short-term effect. Vincent?
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks.
I have a quick question.
Please. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a quick question I wanted to ask. Like you said that after data camp, you'll conduct an assessment and see if we pass the course, and if not, then you'll be like making us do another course. So that course will be simultaneous with other courses in fall 2020, or will it be before the start of the fall semester?
It will be before the start of the fall semester quarter. Yes. So
And
we'll give you
there-
more information about that. The details. We're figuring out the best dates for this. It is quite possible that some of that, or maybe for a lot of you, would have to be virtual through Zoom, right? But it's set up for an intense format. So we will provide more details soon about that. But you should expect that early in September we will share that assessment with you. Okay, and then we get the information back, and we'll figure out the results from that, and then make our recommendations to everybody. And so again, that will happen before the start of fall. So it won't affect your ability to do well in fall classes, because we're looking at 12 to 14 units. So I hope 14, because that would mean you're also taking the communications class. Putting another 4 on top of that in your first quarter is probably not good for your mental health. So I don't recommend it. So we're going to do that in advance of the quarter so that you can get that out of the way. You're going to bump up your skill set enormously, and then be ready to kind of go with all the stuff that we're going to do with you in fall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
We got a question from, actually he's raising his hand right now.
Okay.
So I just wanted to talk about the involvement of statistics in our course. And as I'm seeing that you're giving us a free subscription of DataCamp for our programming cells. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to know, what stats course do you recommend before we join the program? Because I'm not from a stats background, and I feel statistics plays a bigger part in a business analytics role. So I just wanted to talk about some role of statistics in our course.
Yes. So I don't have a particular course off the top of my head, but we can definitely share that with you. Right? It's not a bad thing to review. I mean, most of you or all of you have taken at least one statistics class at some point. I know statistics is something that often quite quickly fades away, particularly the way, unfortunately, it's taught in most schools. Right? It's very dry and very boring. But that's not how we're going to teach it. It's going to be, again, very applied, really directly related to problems. So it's going to be much more interesting. I can guarantee you that, compared to what your other statistics classes have been. But we can definitely share some links with you with additional information on some stuff to review. Again, just basic probability. We're also going to have an online math and stats bootcamp, which will kind of take you through some basic statistics as well. So that will definitely be helpful. We'll be making that available to you shortly also. It's an online web format where you can just go through this. That, my guess is, will, for probably about 90% of the people, take care of kind of the basics of statistics. And then probably a class on regression is not a bad thing to kind of refresh yourself on.
It sounds good. Thanks.
Okay.
Vincent,
Yes.
Can you be a little more specific about what topics exactly? So you've mentioned linear regression and probability, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you can specifically tell us that hey, you have to be well versed in this topic?
Why don't I pass this on to Terry? So Terry is going to be teaching the business analytics class in fall, and so maybe you can give a better idea of some of the topics that will come up.
Sure. So, I mean, the course, I guess the reality of the course is that we cover a lot, right? We're going to cover, some regression, we're going to cover some time series, but we're also covering simulation, decision-making, optimization. There's just a lot of material in that course, right? And so it's not that we won't touch on it, but the issue is that if this is the first time you've seen a t-test, it's going to be too fast for you, if that makes sense. And so what you want to do is kind of go through, if you took probability and statistics as an undergrad or even as a master's student, you want to go through that material and just get comfortable again, right? You want to kind of be speaking that language so that you kind of focus on the problem that we're solving. Vincent alluded to the same thing a while ago in terms of programming. When you're so busy trying to figure out the code that you can't really think about the problem context and the thing that we're actually trying to solve, it becomes an issue. And whether it's programming or whether it's mathematics or statistics, you just don't want to be stuck on that, right? You want to be conversant enough that you can kind of focus on the actual business context and the problem that we're solving. So I think that would be my my answer. You know, you won't hurt yourself by refreshing as much as you can on basic statistics and probability. I will touch on it, but you know, you don't want to be trying to remember it at that time. I think that's the best way to say it. And I, as Vincent said, I will follow up with some links. So just to give you a little bit more direction on that, kind of say, hey, this, if I were in your shoes, these are the things that I would try to cover. We can send you some of those, including what DataCamp has to offer on those that type of course.
Cool, that sounds great. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll wait for the links.
So we are running at about 30 minutes over time. You will notice this, that we are all very enthusiastic about what we teach. And sometimes we have more content than we're able to get through. That is definitely a flaw. It's something that I work on constantly to try to improve on. But the main goal for today was to get you a little bit of a peek in the kitchen, if you will. Get a bit of a flavor of what the program is like, what some of the main people you're going to be interacting with are like. And again, I think we're all very, very passionate and very, very enthusiastic about analytics and the potential for analytics. And I think we convey that to our students as well. So think about your preparation. I know some of you are still somewhat undecided. I hope we've been able to give you a little bit of more information about what you can expect from us. And please, again, do reach out with questions, anything that we can do to help you get ready. And we're not in control of COVID-19. If we were, we would get rid of it right away. So there are definitely going to be some struggles. I know some of you are having difficulty getting visas right now, and that's really unfortunate. But just try to do everything you can to get that through the process. And we will do our very best to be as accommodating and as flexible as we can until you can get here. Right? We're looking forward to getting everybody on campus and everybody in the classroom, because that is the ideal environment. But again, even through Zoom, you can do a fair amount. Right? It's not as nice as being able to see everybody face to face and be able to interact a little more fluidly, but we can still teach you a lot, even if it is for part of fall or the start of fall through Zoom. Right? So you should not be afraid of that. Okay. So with that, again, we're at 8:30 here local in San Diego. So I think we'll stop the recording. We'll post the recording as well if you want to share it with somebody else, or if you want to look at a couple of more pieces. We'll take a look at the chat and answer any questions. And if you have any other questions, the easiest people to get in touch with are going to be Nancy and Emily. But feel free to also reach out to us if you have any questions that we can help you with. Okay. Good luck in your deliberations, and I hope to see you all in fall. Thanks very much for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.